Fire Radio.
Hey guys, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, Battalion Chief Chad Cave, Frederick County, Maryland Fire Department. Chief, thanks for joining me, brother.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
This is cool. So I love getting involved with different projects and things that happen, different conferences, opportunities, and I like to capitalize on them. So that's why I travel a lot, because I like to expose myself to different parts of the country, meet with different people, and get to know people. I was invited down through RJ, Capital Fire, and he's also a boss down there in Frederick County. He invited me down. You guys were doing some training in Frederick County for your own people. And then at the end of that, there was like a brotherhood night, just doing some cold bevies underneath the pavilion at the Union Hall. And he had a couple people there to speak. And it was more about like a Q&A for your own members. And you were the MC. You were the guy that was asking the questions and so on. And I enjoyed the back and forth. And that night was an informal powwow, if you will, to build relationships, to strengthen camaraderie and culture. And it was fun to be a part of it. And in fact, as the night went on, I just thought it was getting better and better. And that's where you and I crossed. And I said to you that night, I said, I'd love to have you on the podcast because I enjoyed some of your points of view. I love a guy that's got experience and speaks from the heart. And that is very much what I envision when I talk about you. So, Chad, thank you for being here, man. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here.
So talk to me a little bit then. You and I, that night, we ended up on a conversation where I was talking about, and what I think is really important, is that we promote people that are good at firefighting and good as officers. And I know that we were talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we were talking about some people not wanting to promote, wanting to retire as a backstep firefighter, mastering that craft, if you will, after 25, 30 years, or staying in a company officer and not wanting to promote up the line to, say, a battalion chief spot. And then I was talking about getting a seat at the table and how important that is. And we need good people to represent the gun-ho, excitable firefighters. We need a chief or people that wear the gold to represent what those core values and mission of the department need to be. And so we were chatting about that, and I'd love to continue that conversation with you because I really enjoyed where it was going that night.
Yeah, it's a big decision, really, I think. For me, I was in a primo position. I was in a house where, as the house captain, I had my own budget. I managed the day-to-day operations of the station. Worked to get all three shifts in sync with each other, was flying high. I mean, the company pride that I was able to foster in that environment, I could have retired there easily. But, peers, they put it out there as, hey, look, man, like, look what's going on here at the company. Imagine that at the battalion level.
Yes.
But that's even harder. And that's a hard task, right? Because you go from one firehouse with 30 some individuals to a whole battalion, with 60, 70 individuals, for just your shift. And to get that kind of people all on the same page can be very challenging, but it's a challenge worth having.
It requires a motivated individual to do it, though. One that's respected, one that comes from a place of been there, done that, one that's got the experience, the pedigree behind them. I mean, if you're going to motivate people, the guy that's motivated them has got to be a motivator. And he's got to come from a place that he's done his time. He put his time in.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? Like, I think there's a lot of value in spending time within the ranks and within each position. Clearly, I mean, there are some rock stars who do promote fast, and those are the guys, like, they get it, right? Like, they definitely grasp the whole concept. They see the big picture early, and they move up a lot for good, and then occasionally, sometimes it's not. But I think spending that time in the ranks, it really gives you that street cred, allows you to understand what's going on, and then moving, from that station commander position into the battalion, and people see like, hey, like this is what you're about, right? You're about the job. You're about talking shop. And that's really where you get the buy-in. So showing up to the firehouse, being able to still be in touch with the lingo and, you know, the current training trends that people are doing, that helps immensely when you're when you become a battalion.
What I find really interesting about that, I mean, 31 years in the fire service, right? We were chatting before. We came in right around the same time. I'm a couple of years after you, but 31 years in the fire service, you certainly could cruise, right? I mean, you got your time. You could cruise. You could go through the paces, or you could continually challenge yourself and put yourself out there and learn what's happening. I mean, the one thing that I think is really important is kind of keeping a finger on the pulse of the conversations and what's happening and what's trending. And I don't mean in a social media way. I'm talking about just in the fire service, right? Different topics or ideas that are now the bigger than they once were, or things that are coming to light or to head. I mean, you could very easily dial all that out, but it's not who you are.
No, and I tell you, a really good example of that is I remember back when I've never been like a huge social media guy, but like when Aaron Fields was presenting, you know, his nozzle forward,
right,
you know, curriculum, and guys on my shift had actually taken that training, you know, and these are fire 3, you know, fire 2 and fire 3 guys that, hey, Cap, you know, we got this stuff we learned. You want to try it out? Yeah, let's go do it. Right. And so we go out and they showed it to me, and wow, man, that makes a lot of sense. Like we've been doing it the hard way for all these years, right? Duck crawling on both knees, banging up both knees instead of just one. Right.
Yeah.
And, really what, like, so we took that and like, man, that just went like wildfire. And, when you have probies coming in and you've got the house captain, you know, dressed out in turnout gear, you know, doing the clamp and moving the nozzle forward, right with them in the training, like that's where you get that buy-in. That's where the people are, that's where those kids, they get hungry and they're like, oh yeah, we're doing this. Right.
Yeah.
But that applies to all facets, within the firehouse, you know, like, you got to lead by example, man. Like it can't be beneath you to clean a toilet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes,
they see you doing it. How are they gonna give you pushback? Right? How are they gonna say, that's not my job. Why should I clean the toilet? You know?
Oh, 100%.
Well, the daggone captain's cleaning the toilet, so you can, you.
Yeah, you better get your ass in there then. Captain's
Right.
doing it, you better be doing it, right?
Right.
Absolutely. I think the one important thing too, Chief, and I'd love to get some feedback on this, is the importance of saying yes. Giving your people opportunity to try different things or motivate in different ways, maybe different mindset than you have. But too often we say no because it's something new or different, because all of a sudden that's going to take work, or it's going to take us down a different path, or it's going to call into question something you've known to be true for so long. And so it's just easier to tell our people no. But what I come to find out through, you know, National Fire Radio and traveling around and talking to incredible people and seeing really squared away fire departments and fire companies, the companies that say yes, the companies that double down on their people, the winners, and they give them those tools and opportunities to proceed with trying different things or thinking about different theory, that's where we get success. I mean, I firmly believe that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, couldn't agree more. And so just a little background, like, you know, early on as a lieutenant in the organization, you know, worked in a combination house, where some of the leadership within the organization, both career and volunteer, right? Like, stuck in the ways, didn't want to, you know, you bring a easier way of doing something or a more efficient way of doing something. Well, why do we need to do that, right? We've always done it this way. It ain't broke, don't try to fix it. And that is so frustrating. And you know, a simple thing like you know, DC Fire Department, those guys pioneered putting the rings on the face piece for RIT, right? And
Yes.
and so, hey man, like we saw this, let's try it. Can we do it? Oh no, we can't do that. That might void the manufacturer's warranty. Who gives a dang about a damn warranty if it's going to rescue one of our brothers, right? Like nobody gives a shit. And now Scott, right, is, and all these manufacturers, what do they have? They got rings on it, right? Because of a grassroots effort. And so moving forward, right, like having that frustration and a couple different assignments of those type of situations, I moved to the company and where I have the ability to make these decisions. And I'll never forget, man, like the fireman came to me like first couple of weeks and they're like, hey, what do you think about moving this on the apparatus to enhance this operation and to make it easier, more user friendly? And I'm like, look, man, as long as you guys understand that here in this house, like we're an engine company, and as long as that is our primary focus of being an efficient engine company, I'm all on board. So they gave me the proposal. I routed it up the chain of command. The volunteer corporation chief at that time, he's like, hey man, I don't care what you do. I don't really manage this station. It's all you. You do it. Then I went to my battalion chief. He's like, well, if they're on board, I'm on board. Do what you got to do. We had a combi tool on an engine company, you know, with the power pack that took up a whole compartment. We had a big box fan in there, or, you know, a PPV fan, chainsaw, all this stuff that's unnecessary. I've got a rescue squad in a truck right down the street, right? I don't need that. I need to be able to.
More is better, right?
No, yeah, of course, more is better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the one thing that this company, like, we run a lot of first responder calls, and the one item that besides the hose that gets utilized the most is the aid bag. Well, that was in a interior compartment up in the cab. Well, guys are busting themselves up pulling this thing in and out, right? So let's move it. High-rise racks, completely inaccessible in a transverse compartment. Hey, we're going to move those out. We're going to put them in this free compartment on the side now so we can grab the racks and extend our lines long and do what we need to do more efficiently. And so that was awesome to be able to be empowered to make those decisions. And that's really where that company pride started like taking hold, and really like, cause I was listening to the guys in the house, right?
Yeah.
Giving them that opportunity to see what they wanted. Another, like, you know, super proud thing that, my technician, at the time, Matt Knight, he's now a lieutenant in the fire marshal's office with me. He came to me and said, hey, what do you think about putting a gate valve on the wagon pipe? I'm like, well, go on. So he explains it to me. You know, he saw it somewhere, thought it was a good idea. I'm like, well, let's go out. Let's go test it. Let's try it. So we went out, we did it, ran a couple scenarios. All right, I can see the value in this. I can see how this is like, we could throw a pipe in service quick and not waste water.
Yeah.
So we developed our routine and how we would apply this to our area and our first due, and implemented it, added the gate valve, got all 3 shifts on board, ended up using that same scenario drill twice on 2 multi-alarm fires within our first, one that we ended up being first on, just because of the right timing. And that was 7 row houses off the whole alpha side, you know, 7 row houses. Well, what better place than to throw a blitz attack on it with a master stream?
Let's put it to work.
Put it to work, and it worked. It worked beautifully. And then another one was a 3-story garden apartment with fire all 3 floors on the exterior balconies, and that worked out good. We had some grabs that we had to go do, so the officer firefighter go do that. The driver put the blitz in action, and it worked flawlessly because we accepted it, we trained on it, we drilled on it, and it worked as it was designed to work.
That's it. You got one guy takes initiative.
Yep.
You have a culture that allows him to present ideas.
Yep.
And then you have a management staff that encourages it and says, well, I like it, but let's go put it to the test. And
Yep.
now all of a sudden you change your operational procedures because you found something better based on one guy's initiative to find and seek out additional information outside of his own zip code.
Yeah, and to expand on that,
Yeah.
after the other companies around saw that, wow, that like, okay, this is legit. Like this is effective. This isn't just some little YouTube video that 31 saw. Now, you know, the rest of them got gate valves on their wagon pipes.
Of
As a
course.
matter of fact, the 3 new pumpers that we just purchased for the county now have a gate that's built in on the top.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
100%.
you can
Yeah.
charge
No,
it.
they have a shut off up top so that they
Yep.
can engage. Yep.
Yep. So,
Absolutely. How
really
long
good.
ago was that? I'm just curious.
That was back in 2000. I want to say 18ish. Yeah.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it because we did a whole big thing on that, and
Yeah.
I'm curious if that's what he saw. I'm just curious.
It might have been. It was like a 2017, 2018 time period.
That is for me. It's one of those things that I absolutely enjoy about what we do with National Fire Radio. We call it sharing the tips, tricks, and hacks of how we do it. Right? Everybody does it a little bit different all over the country, and something that we've been looking for an answer for probably is commonplace somewhere else. We need a platform where we can share those ideas with one another, right? Because all it's about is making each other better. And so if I have a better way to do something or you have a better way to do it, let's put it on this platform and share it because that's how we progress forward. I love it. Yeah. And having a management staff in place that allows for that to happen, encourages, ideas, thinking, right? Because ultimately we're individuals. I mean, we all bring something to the table, right? So we
100%.
need to embrace that and then put it out there. It's those departments or companies where they just don't have the buy-in from their people because the department or company's not buying into their own people. And so that's where the miss is, man, for sure. Let me ask you about this leadership, good and bad. That's what we're talking about. You mentioned a couple things back from your earlier days where maybe a little leadership that was a little skewed or not so great. Did that have to do with you being the officer you are today, the guy that you wanted to become? Because bad leaders also teach us how to lead, right?
100%.
They teach us how we don't want to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm no patron saint.
None of us are.
Yeah, and I look back on my lieutenant years, and while I had a good time, I had an awesome crew. It was busy house, and I look back and reflect on it, and I think of the things that, like, man, I definitely could have done better. Like I let some rookies down back then. Like I didn't feed them like I should, right? And it really was that I had to do some self-reflection towards like the 8th year going into that assignment, and said, you know what, like I gotta move on. I gotta get out. I gotta get a fresh start. And so I put in a transfer to go to the truck house. I got lucky enough to get it. That was a fresh start. And then I swore after that, like moving forward, man, any of the rookies I get, anybody on my crew, like I'm going to give them what I didn't get and what I didn't give for those guys that worked with me in that 8 years. I mean, not that it was bad. It just, we were too busy about having a good time and just coming to work and having fun. I mean, no doubt we did training, but not to the extent that we probably should have, right? But you learn. And I've manned up going to those guys and, hey, man, I'm sorry I didn't do this for you back then, and they're like, hey, it's all good, man. Like you were trial by fire back then too. Like we didn't have leadership development. We didn't have anybody to tell you how to be a lieutenant. You had time on the job. You took the test. You went through the promotional process. You got made, and here you go. Here's your blue helmet, and have at it. Don't cause us paperwork.
What was that moment for you where you realized you needed that fresh start? Was there a pivotal moment, or you just said, man, I don't like where this is headed. It's been, I want something different. I want more.
I think it was accountability by some peers. One of the peers, there was a lieutenant at the Station 2 during that time, Chief Stolberg. He was a lieutenant then, and then his chauffeur at the time was Chief Malta, and they were a fast-paced crew, man. And I feel like for me, like I think a lot of times when Stolberg would challenge me, it's man, you don't work in the situation we work in. You don't have to deal with the issues we have to deal with over here. It's easier to provide an excuse than it is to see the real picture. And it's like a fishbowl. It's one of those things where you don't see it while you're in it, but when you get out, you're like, wow. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I love that. I mean, listen, thank you for sharing that because I'm sure it's not easy to talk about, but that's that's incredible. I mean, too many people could continue on a path that at the end of their career they just hang it up and walk away. And you went all in again. You wanted more. And being challenged by your peers and recognizing that, it's awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
well, so I don't know, like that epiphany you're talking about, but like there, one of the rookies that I had, I mean, he was good. We did training and stuff with him, but again, it wasn't. I feel like I didn't give him enough,
Yes.
and now I can't help but think that maybe I am that one subpar leader that he had that made him more motivated because the guy he's killing it, right? Like he's drilling with his guys, and you put him in the slowest assignment and he's gonna make it into a gold mine. And like I can't help think, but like maybe was I that crappy supervisor that contributed to that? I mean, I wasn't an asshole to work for,
I get
like, but did I not give him enough? And then that's what motivated him to be like, you know what? When I get my guys, I'm not gonna be that guy.
Well, that's it. I mean, holding yourself accountable, right? And I think though, there's a lot there. There's just a lot there because when you break it down, it's everybody. Who's to say what's right or wrong, right? We affect one another by how we operate, how we work, who we are, how we produce ourselves, and our quality of work. All that has to come into play. It's one big equation, if you will. And some days are bad, some days are good, right? But overall, right, the overall career, what does it look like and where do you want it to go? Affecting change in people, good or bad. It's incredible how that can snowball, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So, talk to me a little bit about your upbringing. I mean, did you have an upbringing throughout the fire service? Did you grow up in it?
No, I actually grew up in a law enforcement family. My brother was a cop. My grandfather was a constable, and that was the track that I was headed for. I joined the volunteer fire department because a friend of mine was like, hey, I think I want to join this and do this. And so, I want to do that. So I joined and, stuck with it. And, hey, I can always be a volunteer, right? But you can't be a volunteer cop. But then, 19 years old, waiting to become 21, become a cop, working a job I didn't like. And a friend of mine that was in the fire service was like, hey, you want a fire department job? The state of West Virginia is hiring for the Air National Guard. Come and put the application in. Cool, man. When's that close? 2 hours. I'm on the way. So yeah, so that changed the course there. Went through that process, got hired, and worked that job for 3 years. And then yeah. And it was local. It was in my hometown. So you work for the state, but you had to be in the National Guard in order to do that job. So
got it.
Crash fireman. And so I worked there, and then eventually moved out to the municipal fire department world. And I went to Montgomery County, Maryland, for 2 years. Applied for both Frederick and Montgomery. Frederick's where I live. That's where I wanted to work. Right. Good experience, great experience. Opportunity came up to apply for it again, and there was a lot of guys who were either part-timers or volunteers up in Frederick that worked in Montgomery, and they're like, man, if you don't jump, you're a fool, because this is ground floor right here. And I did it, and I didn't look back.
Ground floor as in what? The department was really starting to scale?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, when I got hired, it was less than 100 people.
Right.
And
okay.
So, now we're over 6. So, pretty good growth, I think, in 20
yes.
in 21 years. Really good growth, a lot of good opportunities. There is definitely something said for being able to serve the community that you live in.
Sure.
the commute is great, but just you have more of a stake in the game, right? And that was one of my standards for being as a house captain or any time really was, hey man, like anybody you encounter, you're going to treat with respect because you never know who I know and who I'm going to have to run into on a day that we're off. That's going to go, oh, I remember you on that call. You guys were, you guys did a fantastic job, or you guys were terrible, so, I don't want to deal with that. And so because of that, like we're going to serve proudly and we're going to serve well.
Yeah, I think being rooted in the community that you serve is important. I know it's so hard for so many though, right? I mean, it's a lot of these departments, people can't afford to live in their first dues or in the city boundaries where they work. It's cost prohibitive, things like that. But if you have that opportunity, I think it does bring another layer of value and accountability.
Oh.
But if you don't live there and you're still operating there, shop within, talk to the people within your area. Let them know that you're there. I think all of that's important, and again, it holds you accountable, more accountable.
No, for sure, 100%.
Yeah. That's cool. So into Frederick, from 100 when you got hired to over 600 today, presently, in just over 20 years or so, that is stellar growth. And you guys continue to grow, do you not?
We do. We continue to grow. So for contrast, my assignment initially right out of the academy, it was only an 8-week academy then. You had to have pre-fire department experience in order to get hired. And I went to Pointer Rocks Firehouse. 2 of us out of the same recruit class, day work, Monday through Friday, 6 to 4, with a rotating Kelly that popped up once every 3 weeks. And that I was there for a year and I ran 34 calls. So you want to talk about like really questioning, what did I do? Why did I leave Battalion 1 in Montgomery County to come do this? But I stuck it out. Yeah, that was tough. I stuck it out, and eventually a year and a half later, I got assigned to Station 3 downtown, which you've been there. And yes. It's a gem. It's a downtown firehouse, busy. And that was awesome. And when I went there, we only had 5 people on the shift. You had the sergeant, and then there was 4 firefighters. We didn't have technicians or, chauffeurs, dedicated chauffeurs then.
Right.
So we had 2 ambulances that we staffed, a rescue squad and an engine company. And we were really dependent on the volunteers to be there to staff the other apparatus if both ambulances were out, because both ambulances went out. The sergeant was there by himself, and oftentimes he'd have to go driver only. Right. That station now is fully staffed with 3 on the squad, 3 on the engine, 2 on the front ambulance, 2 on the back ambo. And that's across the board, and to the point that now we've got 2 stations that only have 2 firefighters assigned to them. Those will be rectified in the future, but now we're moving to 4-person staffing with staffing in places we didn't have before.
Yeah.
So
it's gotta be exciting.
It's very, very exciting. It's interesting because like the conversation is like, oh man, like we're so used to running with 3 people, and now you got this 4th sometimes, and then you get a volunteer on there and you got 5, 6. You're like, what do I do with my hands? Like what are we supposed to do with these extra people? We're not used to it, but it's awesome.
I used to wear many hats. Now I wear one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the volunteer system still exists, right? It's still a combination department, right?
Yeah, very much so. It's a combination department. There's still some really strong volunteer corporations within the county. And that's another thing that I reflect on is how that relationship has changed over the years. In the beginning, we were definitely the enemy, not the enemy, but you know what I'm saying? Like we were the adversary because we're coming in and we're taking over, and that's not the case. But the relationship now, I think, between the career and the volunteer is way better than it's ever been. We've got some corporations that are host to DFRS staff, and those guys that work in those assignments are like, hey, just forget we're up here and don't ever think about transferring us, okay? Because the corporation treats them that good,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they return the favor by working collectively with them.
It takes a lot of groundwork, though, to make those relationships happen, right? Because as obviously responsibilities of the career side is growing and growing. I mean, you're growing, you're scaling at a pretty busy pace, and so I'm sure that has to do with some dwindling volunteer roles in some places, ensuring adequate staffing on runs and things like that. So I have to think on a managerial side, there's finding that balance in conversation to make sure that both sides understand that the mission is the most important and finding balance in how to get there, right? I mean, those talks have to be gentle at times, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. And when you present it to them as far as, hey, like what we need to do, this is for the citizens that we're serving, right? We have to get rid of our self-interest, your self-interest, and focus on what is right for the citizens, and that's when we get movement. Like, the fire chief's never going to make everybody happy, right? Like he's
Can't.
some things some things the union's going to like, some things the union's not going to like, some things the volunteers are going to like, some things the volunteers aren't going to like, right? Like, it is what it is. But what really helps, I think, in our situation is that our fire chief has come up through the rank structure, started as a fireman, and genuinely cares about Frederick County, like to the point where the guy eats, sleeps, and breathes Frederick County, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's not an outsider that's just come in and is just coming in to make changes based because he wants to make a resume builder for himself. Like, he's got
we were just talking about,
right? Got the street cred, you've got the FaceTime. People can read him because they've known him forever. So that's a tremendous help.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I also have to think, too, though, as you grow and scale, growing pains becomes probably a common theme. You look at increasing your staffing, which means more people, bringing more people through the academy. You guys run a very rigorous academy. I want to talk about that a little bit. But I got to believe there's been some growing pains along the way to accommodate all of it. Budgeting, administration, all of it, right? And then implementing all these sweeping changes or things like that. Can you speak a little bit about those growing pains? I mean, the one thing you mentioned to me that was really interesting was the whole feeding the young, people coming in to the fire service today that don't know anything about the fire service. Is that something that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the things that helps us out with that relationship is, like, when I got on the job, it was very much so us and them. And over the years, that's been filtered out, right? So, like, the new guys coming in, I don't think that they're being fed that, hey, the volunteers are the enemy, right? The volunteers is the adversary. They're not being fed that, right? It's not being pushed in their head. Union isn't going after all the volunteers and trying to dissolve the volunteers. Union is focused on labor management, right? And
Yes.
that's the part that they've got their focus dialed in on, and that's what helps. But yeah, I mean, it's the culture is what you make it and how you establish it. If you allow it to be that negative culture, obviously all the kids that are coming in, if they're working in that environment, are going to just carry that on. And so you really got to exterminate that. And that's the responsibility that we as the battalion chiefs have to establish within our battalions. Like, we're not going to foster this negative attitude towards the division, towards the corporations. We're going to find a solution. We're going to work through it. Obviously, some things take time. Again, you're not going to make everybody happy, but at the end of the day, you got to stay focused on what the mission is, right? And that's the service to the public.
Young and impressionable, right? You get kids coming in. The job is starting to trend younger and younger. I just got back from Texas from this past weekend. I was down at the Joey D conference, and all these kids in Texas. I mean, there was probably 200 people each day on the training grounds or in the lecture halls, and they're young kids, man. I mean, these guys are babies, right? And the way that they're scaling and growing down there, these fire districts are growing by multiple stations a year because of explosive growth down there in these ESDs, emergency service districts and these other cities down there. They just have incredible growth. And you look at all these young kids. I mean, they're all in their 20s. And the one common thing that, and I'd love some feedback on this because I know this is important to you, but they only know what they know. So if you feed them what you want them to know, they don't know any different, right, Chief?
Oh, absolutely, right? Like, we take that for granted because the knowledge that we have is just legacy knowledge, right? We just learned it along the way. And, I go back to that as an officer, right? It was trial and error as a lieutenant. Like, it was literally trial by fire. Like, there was no leadership development back then. I didn't know what I didn't know, and when I screwed up, that's when I knew, that's when I learned. But now we have the opportunity. We have so many people that can mentor and lead, that you got to take those experiences that you had and you have to pass those on. And I take it for granted that these kids go through this academy, right? And they're like, oh, well, they're going through the academy. They're good, right? I mean, Frederick's got a stellar academy. Like, they're good to go. Yeah, Frederick's got a stellar academy, but they can only give so much. They're just giving them the nuggets, right? And it's up to the field and the stations to take that seed that's been planted and fertilize it, right? So that seed continues to grow and really capitalize on that, because otherwise, if you don't, they don't know what they don't know, and they're just going to be stagnant, and they're going to be, they could be a subpar firefighter for the rest of their career because nobody's taught them that they're not.
That's what's incredible to me, right? So if you have a lot of these kids that I was talking to were exactly what you were speaking at. They didn't have that legacy knowledge, right? They didn't come from the volunteer ranks prior to being hired. They just got hired as a, in the beginning, it's hired as a job, right? We have to educate them that it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle, right? It's a way of life, it's a way of thinking, and that if you go all in on the fire service, everything in your life almost revolves around the fire service. It's really a lifestyle, if you will. And they don't know that coming into it. They come into it as a job. And we have an obligation to teach them. And it can be even broken down into volunteer houses too. Like, it's not that it's your main focus of income or a job per se, but you still have to give yourself to it. But the return on it is huge, and it becomes you. It consumes you in a way. So we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're educating these newbies, these young guys, these probationary firefighters that have no legacy knowledge at all. We got to give them every single tool for them to understand what's expected of them, and then what this job can do for them.
Yeah. It's all about shop talk, man. Like, you got to get them off the social media to a degree, right? Like, I mean, social media can be good, but like living in your phone is not good. You got to get them talking theory. You got to get them talking about the different parts of, hey, what's the different parts of a nozzle, right? Like, oh, it's a nozzle. I don't know. Like, the handle? No, man. Like, this is called the bail, right? What's the thing on top of the engine that squirts water out of it? The deck gun? Yeah. Well, what else is it called? A deck gun? All right. So if you go to this job and the boss says, hey, man, put the wagon pipe in service, right? Are you going to know what he's talking about? Right. So, I mean, how many different terms is there for the wagon pipe? How many different terms is there for a hydrant, right? Like, there's so much lingo out there that's all part of the teaching too. Do you
think though that part of it though takes initiative from our own people though also, right? We got to take that 20-year guy and make him feel good about spending the time with these new kids. It's finding a way, because the new kids can be super inquisitive, but if nobody's willing to work with them or give them back anything in return, they're not going to get anything out of it.
Oh yeah, but we also have to foster that environment where they're feeling comfortable to come and ask those questions,
yes.
Right? Where they make themselves vulnerable to the 20-year guy, and the 20-year guy can just spoon feed them, right? Like, why wouldn't you want to be that guy? Like, the battalion chief thing is cool, but man, that technician job. That's where it's at, right? That guy that doesn't.
For you guys, what, the chauffeur position, or is
yeah,
that?
That's the
Okay.
chauffeur position, right? Theoretically the senior man, right, on the
Right.
shift. Then that doesn't always mean the senior man. Like there could be a guy on shift that's a 20-year fireman, but man, like that's the best spot. You got no administrative roles. You don't have any discipline. All you got to do is come to work, drink coffee, talk shop, and figure out what you're eating for dinner. Like, sign me up. Sign me up
Yeah.
when I get in the drop. That's where I want to be.
Was that, was that your favorite spot?
Well, I never got to experience it because when I promoted from firefighter, it was directly from firefighter to lieutenant. We didn't have that, but I did have the
Okay.
opportunity of being like the unofficial primary driver, myself and Chief Stolberg when we were at Station 2. And so it was kind of that way. And man, it was that's the best, I think.
Good. I'm writing that down. That's a keeper right there. That's good. I love it. So from here, company boss, you enjoyed being a boss, and then all of a sudden, opportunity for battalion chief.
Yeah, so I mean, we do our exams every 2 years, and so we do the captain and the battalion exam 1 year, and then the next year is lieutenant and technician, and so get like those peers going to me and hey, think about that, like moving up, like think of the effect you can have with doing that, and so of course, gave it some thought, and hey, why not, right? And then you're always looking too, right? Like the station assignments are temporary, but promotions are permanent, right?
Yes.
For the most part. But then also like, hey, do I want to work for that guy? No, I don't want to work for that guy. So I'm going to be equal to that guy. So, sometimes that's a motivator to promote up as well. But so promoted up, took the test, got promoted off the list, and went into the battalion, and a whole different experience, man. A lot to learn, but fortunately, the assistant chief of operations really good at working with you to get you prepped in that position. Other battalion chiefs on the job that take the job serious, that were firemen, and are promoted to chief and are still firemen. Them helping guide you and mold you and move you along. It really is cool to be able to move around and talk shop in various stations throughout the day. The freedom of the vehicle to just be able to go and set your schedule for the day and how you want to do and to, hey, how do I want my battalion to look? How do I want my battalion to function?
Yeah.
And that's awesome. And really get to learn the county even more than what you thought you knew. I mean, you're driving on roads that you're like, man, I never even knew this part of the county existed. So like that's really awesome. And so moved into the battalion and spent two years in that. Worked in
Did you guys have a formal? Did you have like a formal process, like like an intro to battalion chief, if you will, that once you got appointed, that there's a break-in period, or did you just get handed the keys to the buggy and off you go?
So I kind of my story was a different story because I got promoted, and then right the day after I went out for neck surgery, so I was out on light duty for 6 months.
Okay.
But most guys, you get promoted and you'll do like a ride along, 2 shifts, and then it's here's the keys and go. But we also have the ability that once you're on the battalion chief eligibility list, that you have the ability to act up.
Okay.
So that provides exposure.
Yes.
And I'll say, like, we just did our last week. We just did our battalion chief process, and that list should be getting published here shortly. But like the candidates that are on that list, we're all excited for it because, man, there's some cream of the crop on this list. Yeah. And looking forward to those guys, getting in there right now. Like there's only one forecasted spot, but you just never know what's going to happen. You never know what growth might happen, who might decide to retire. But yeah, it's an exciting list. So
an exciting list. I mean, that's cool because That means there's an environment in place, the culture is in place where people want a seat at the table. They want to bring their ideas and thoughts and move up the line with their experience and knowledge.
For
And
sure.
yeah, that's got to be exciting for you to watch because a lot of those guys probably grew up under your tutelage, and now you're seeing them want to promote and come up the line, especially to a battalion chief spot where battalion chiefs they got a seat at the table, man. Your voice is heard.
You do, and you really like you see things at a different view, right? You see the broader spectrum of everything, and you're privy to way more information than what you had as a station officer. But part of that too, being privy to that information, has to do with how much the battalion chiefs relay to the troops, right? And I think the biggest issue that any organization, probably you think all fire departments, probably the biggest issue is communication, right? So when the fire chief gives his briefing down to the assistant chief, and the assistant chief distributes that information to the battalion chiefs, if those battalion chiefs aren't distributing that to the field, man, that's where the rumors go. That's where the turmoil goes. So it's important that you take it. You got to go to the kitchen table, and you got to sit down, and even if it's information they don't care about or that's relevant to them, you just give it to them, right? Unless it's classified information, what harm is it in providing that information to them? Because they're gonna have more buy-in when they feel like they're in the know. And that's how you squash the rumors. That's how you squash the turmoil. Turmoil is by providing that information to them.
Yeah, where my brain was going with that too was too much or too little. You got to remove yourself. Yeah,
you got to know the discretion, right? Like you got to know what is good information, what's not good information, right? Like you don't want to put out information that somebody can use to derail the momentum of the organization.
Exactly.
Right? Because there might be things under works, but in that same sense, right? It's like transfers. You have to explain it to them. Like if you just keep transfers as a secret, that's all you ever hear. I mean, I used to say, oh, I don't know why transfers got to be a big secret, right? Well, they got to be a secret because to a degree, right? Certain things have to be left off the table, because if it changes at the 11th hour and I don't know about it, then I'm the one that you're going to be pissed off at, right?
That's right.
So you got to know that like things can change, and I'm going to give you what I can give you, but at the end of the day, everything's subject to change.
Yeah. Me well said. So battalion chief, but now you wear a little bit different of a battalion chief's position, right? Where are you now?
Yeah, so back in November, the battalion chief of the fire marshal's office got promoted up to assistant chief of operations. That spot became available, applied for it, got fortunate enough to be selected for it. And that's my job now. I'm the battalion chief, fire marshal's office, and I've got 4 lieutenants that work in that office with the hopes of expanding it in the future. And, I'm experiencing the growing pains in there, and that whole, they don't know what they don't know. That's where I'm at, right? Like, I don't know what I don't know. And fortunately, one of the lieutenants has been in that office for 15 years. The poor guy's had to train every one of his bosses. So he's got to sign he's got to sign a 5-year contract every time he comes in, right? Like,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But, man, like the amount of information that I'm trying to retain, all the moving parts, because we do investigations, and then we also do inspections, preventative inspections. So, you got the phone line, and people, if they don't know, they're calling that number. And if ECC 911 dispatch don't know, they're forwarding it to you, because, you got to find the answer. So it's a lot of playing switchboard operator. You're still a fireman because you're extinguishing fires. As far just as different type issues, right? Just a different type, but it's cool. You get to go to all the fires now, all the good jobs. You get to go to.
There you go.
But yeah, it's so much information. It's definitely a very humbling position to be in.
What's that going to do for you? I mean, I got to think that's exciting, because if you have any aspirations to go up the line, you said that The last guy that was in that position is now the assistant chief of operations. I think that it's important to be well-rounded, right? It's important to try different parts of the job so that you become a little bit more well-rounded. And I have to think that if you get out of the fire marshal's office to go anywhere else, that the knowledge that you learn and retain from that experience will help you just further your growth.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the benefit of being in there is you get that pocket card for the inspector, you get the pocket card for the investigations. You go into the private sector when you retire, you can make
Yes.
you can make a healthy post-retirement salary off of that. Honestly, like that really wasn't even a consideration for me going into it. For me, it was, hey, I think I want to try this. I want to try something new. I feel like within fire rescue, I didn't look at going into special operations because Chief Stolberg's got that dialed in. I didn't want, the training academy, Chief Malta's got that. He's got that, licked.
Sure.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
well-oiled machine. So like what special programs can you go into? All right, this one's coming available. Let's give it a shot. And, pacify me for the next 9 years if I got a pocket card and I go and I decide I want to work. But 31 years is when I'm done. I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to ever shave again. I don't want to grow a beard. I don't want to do that. So if I could be an inspector or an investigator and have a beard, then we'll be all right. But if that's off the table, then I might just be a happily retired man traveling the world. So we'll see.
Well, I love all of that. And it sounds like, a well-deserved retirement whenever that happens. But quite a career, Chief. Quite a career. I know there's a lot there, 31 years and going, and still in love with it. And I think what you're doing is you are inspiring a lot of other people. I think that, you are in a place now where you are that senior guy in a way that is paving the way for others behind you. And it's got to be exciting to watch those younger faces that you knew years ago come up behind you and promote. And it just sounds like Frederick is a very good place to be right now. It sounds like there's a lot happening and more growth on the horizon.
Yeah, it is, and it all comes full circle. So you did the podcast with Captain Haddad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So Haddad, as a matter of fact, that fireman I talk about that was one of the ones that, hey, let's do this. Let me show you how to do the clamp. The Aaron
Yes.
Fields nozzle forward stuff. He was one of my firemen then. He's now house captain at Station 23, and my son is his probie.
Wow, that's cool. Congratulations.
So
that's awesome.
Full circle.
Proud Papa moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he's got a good mentor in front of him, which I was just going over. I just wrote it down. Haddad, Malta, RJ, Mater, like these are all guys that were on the podcast, and it was because you guys all work for the same department, and it was because I was exposed to you guys, and I just met incredible people down there. I've enjoyed every interaction I've had in Frederick. In fact, I'll be down next week for the conference, and I'm looking forward to that. I hope you and I will cross paths while I'm down there,
For sure.
which would be great. But there's just a lot of good things happening there, Chief. It's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, there is. And like you mentioned the conference, I mean, there's a grassroots effort,
The Key
RJ.
City, right? Key City
Right.
Fire Conference? Yeah.
Key City Fire Conference with over 200 attendees. This is the first one ever. I don't have any involvement in it, but man, I'm super proud of this and where this is coming from. RJ, he pitched it to me. It was like, well, he originally pitched the panel discussion, right? After the layered training, it was like, hey, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. And I think that was super successful. And I think that, more people are going to attend, right? After they saw the recording of it, saw what it was about. And then now, man, this conference, I mean, I had no idea that this thing would have taken off the way that it has. I mean, 200 some participants, from all over the country, even a guy from FDNY coming down to Frederick, Maryland for fire training, right? Like that's a big deal. And it just goes to show where Chief Malta and RJ and all these other guys have placed Frederick and put him on the map, right? You know, with the firefighting chief, you know, his Instagram page. Like, we're not just this little podunk fire department anymore. Like, we've got skin in the game.
We've got skin in the game. Well said. And it's just an exciting time. And I just want to thank you for your time today. I know you got a lot going on, and you and I have been trying to get this together. We tried once before. We had some sound issues. But it was just great to get to know you just a little bit more today on the show, man. I truly appreciate you, Chief, joining me today. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And I look forward to seeing you next week.
For sure. And final thoughts for you. After 31 years, exciting times in Frederick, a lot of growth that's happened under your watch in a way, and being a part of all of it, and moving forward. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts is just I'm seeing out my 9 years, and I can't imagine like where we'll be in 9 years. The progress we've made. It just, again, man, it comes down to those grassroots efforts of the people on the floor, not giving up, pursuing it, putting forth the ideas, management being receptive to the ideas, and really just driving that needle forward.
Battalion Chief Chad Cave, thank you, Chief. Thanks for joining me today on the podcast. It was a great back and forth, getting to know you a little bit. I think a lot of good nuggets came out of this one today, so I appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much.
You too. Thanks, man.
Good. Stay right where you are. I'm going to sign off the podcast. I'll come right back to you, Chief.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Battalion Chief Chad Cave out of the Frederick County, Maryland Fire Department. What a great place. They got a lot going on. The Key City Fire Conference is coming up next week, and a lot of great instructors and a lot of good happening there, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm looking forward to that. And do me a favor, a lot of the conversation today hit on some good key moments, and I think that those are the talking points that we want to focus on. And so do what I do every time. I tell you, take this back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. I challenge you to do that. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.